Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Selena and I'm so thrilled that you've chosen to join me today. In the kitchen, I am going to be making some hot cross buns. Now, hot cross buns, I don't know if they're available all over the world, but they are something that Australians are used to having at Easter time. Our family enjoy eating these on Good Friday. So I'm making this video and going to hopefully get this one released just slightly before Easter. So anyone else who wants to put together some homemade hot cross buns will have more than enough time to get that together for their family as well. I'm going to be making 4 different flavored hot cross buns today. So traditionally hot cross buns were like a spiced sweet bread and they have like a dried mixed fruit through it, and they have a little piped cross on the top. I'm going to make the traditional ones today. However, I have noticed in the supermarket, they've started to come out with some pretty creative and fun looking flavors. And I was tempted to buy some, and I haven't bought hot cross buns in like years. I've always made them, but I don't normally make fun, varied flavors. So I was tempted by the ones in the supermarket and I thought, well, that's cool. I'm gonna make some in those kinds of flavors. So I'm getting my inspiration for today from those new ones that have been released for the supermarkets in Australia. And I haven't made all of these flavors before. So my base hot cross bun recipe I have made, and I can recommend that one to anyone who wants to make hot cross buns. But come with me, let's see if what I'm thinking will work for these flavored ones does in fact work, and then if it fails, hopefully you can learn from my mistakes as well as me. I am going to be using digital scales for the majority of my recipes, and the reason I use digital scales is it is just a very accurate way to get consistent results. I understand not everyone watching this video has digital scales or is used to the metric system, so I will have a cup converter down below in the description box for anyone who needs to use it. I will also have a temperature converter because we operate in Celsius, not Fahrenheit, but I know there are viewers who like to, or who have Fahrenheit as their known measurement of temperature. So I will have a temperature converter as well in my description box, and I'll also do my best to convert the temperature for you. I'm going to be making 4 different flavors, but it's the one dough. So it's the one base. If you can just get that base down, then you can get creative and do what you like as a family, flavors that you would enjoy. And I will be doing these in my KitchenAid mixer, but I'm going to make one batch in my bread maker. For anyone who has a bread maker and is enjoying the convenience that a bread maker brings to the process of making bread, I'm going to make one of my batches in the bread maker just to show you that if you want to make any of these with a bread maker, you can definitely do that as well. So getting straight into it, I'm going to do, I'll put my bread maker one on first, then my bread maker, which is in the background over there, it can get going and started, and then hopefully we're all kind of ready at the same time to finish off when it comes to rolling and putting the cross on the buns and things like that. So I'll just make my traditional hot cross bun in my bread maker. When you're using a bread maker, you need to follow the instructions that the operator's manual has. So for mine, I have a Breville Baker's Dozen bread maker, and it indicates that we need to have our wet ingredients first, followed by our dry ingredients, and then the yeast on top. I will also be doing this using the dough setting on my bread maker, so this won't be baked in there at all. It's just going to do basically the mixing. It's going to do the rising and things like that for me. And yeah, so I use my bread maker all the time to make regular white bread. And this recipe is very similar to my white bread recipe. So if you're familiar with making my white bread or making my bagels, this one really is no more complicated. There's just some extra steps at the end to give these that special hot cross bun difference, so that they're not just a bread roll, okay? So in my bread maker, I'm going to start with my wet ingredients, and that is water. So we need 300 mils of water, and I'm using my scales to weigh and measure that as well. My tap water is filtered rainwater. I don't have chlorine or anything like that in my water, so that isn't something I need to worry about. And yeah, for the bread maker, I don't bother making sure the water's warm. When I make the dough in my mixer or by hand, I will make sure I'm using blood temperature water. So that's around 37 degrees. And it's essentially the same temperature as what your blood is running at, okay? So when you put your finger in the water, it should feel about the same temperature. But yeah, going back to my bread machine, 300 mils. Of water. To that, I'm going to add, instead of olive oil, which is in my white bread, I'm going to use butter today, and I'm going to use a little bit more butter than I do in olive oil. So the butter component, which I will be melting, so for my butter, I'm going to need 30 grams of butter for each batch that I make today. So I'm just going to melt like 120 grams of butter, and then just put the 30 into my bread machine here. If you don't want to use butter, you can use oil in place of the butter, okay? So I'm just going to get that melted in the microwave before I move on. I want 30 grams of melted butter. If you don't want to use butter, use oil. That was the wrong container to use, okay? Don't be like me and use the wrong kind of container to get some kind of jug happening. All right, so I've got my butter, I've got my water. We want 1 teaspoon of salt. This is a ½ teaspoon measure. Some sugar. This is a sweet bun, so we want a little bit of sugar in there. And I need 40 grams of sugar. What I'm doing after adding each of my ingredients is I'm hitting the tare button on my scales, just so that it continually reads 0 when I add my next ingredient. So 40 grams of sugar, that's just white sugar. I'm going to add my flour now, and I'm using baker's flour or bread flour. If you don't have access to bread flour, you can use all-purpose flour, but bread flour is going to give you a better texture in your bread. It has a higher gluten content, and that's what gives you better bread than when you use just plain flour. So it's 500 grams of flour. I add powdered milk when I'm making hot cross buns. So I just want to add a little bit, and I'm just going to add 20 grams of powdered milk, which is 1 heaped spoon roughly. Okay, and then onto the top, I want to add some mixed spice. This is what's going to give my traditional hot cross buns the flavour that we know. And I'm going to add 1 teaspoon. So again, this is a ½ teaspoon measure. I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of mixed spice. And I'm also going to add some yeast. It's 2 teaspoons of yeast straight on top. And I always add bread improver when I'm making bread. You do not have to add bread improver, that's optional. I just find that it keeps my bread a bit softer for a bit longer. All right, so there we go. That's all my ingredients in there. Now, what you can do if your bread maker has a add fruit and nuts section on it, you can add your mixed fruit into that, set your bread maker so that it will delay the adding of your fruit and or nut or whatever to your bread product. I'm going to add my dried fruit straight to my bread mix now because I actually prefer the fruit to be broken up and be really dispersed through the bread. If you prefer to have your dried fruit more intact, then add your dried fruit later on or set it into your bread maker to have that delayed release. So I've got a cup of dried mixed fruit, and if anyone asks where I got my little bowls, that was the reject shop, and it was around Christmas time, so I don't know if they still have them. These are my little cabbage bowls, and these are ones I use at Easter, so I thought it was only fitting that I bring them out for this. I'm adding my cup of dried fruit straight into my mix. I'm going to set this on my dough setting because I don't want it to bake this. I just want this to be dough. And then that will get going in the background, and I'll show you how to make the same thing using a mixer and change the flavour for different variety. So there's our dough, well, our ingredients ready to go into our bread machine. This is the little delay release flap if I wanted to set my bread machine to have my fruit put in later on. Lock it in place, and then I'm just going to hit the dough button and start. So while my bread machine is working hard for me over there in the background, we're going to get some of these other flavours done in our mixer, and I'll just set them in separate bowls so that they're ready to all be finished at the same time. And because I think we're probably going to run out of flour, I'm going to refill my flour bucket now. So this one lives in my kitchen in a drawer because I make bread every day, or almost every day. So this is the one that lives with me in the kitchen, and I store the bulk flour that I buy in these large buckets. And that's the end of that. I'm going to have to make another trip to Costco soon, I think, to get some more of that large bag. I think it was like 25 kilos or something of baker's flour, and it wasn't a bad price. So that large bag fitted into 2 of these buckets. This is the 20-litre bucket. It comes from Bunnings for anyone chasing that information. I am going to make the next batch straight in my KitchenAid, and I'm going to make it in the same way that I do make it in the bread machine. I'm not going to allow my yeast to bloom or anything like that. I don't have any trouble with my hot cross buns turning out when I just make them and give them a decent amount of rest time, all right? So in here, I'm going to use warm water this time, so blood temperature water. So exactly the same ingredients as before. And I don't think I told you the flavours I'm making. So we're going to make the traditional with the dried fruit, which is the one in the bread machine. We're going to make a, let me think, what did I have? Oh, like a Biscoff stuffed type hot cross bun. We're going to make a Nutella stuffed chocolate dough chocolate chip hot cross bun. And we're going to make, oh, here I am thinking, what am I doing today? We're going to make a Cinnabon sort of inspired cinnamon roll hot cross bun. I'm going to stuff it with some cream cheese frosting, and I'm probably going to add some apple to the dough just because I like apple. I don't know if Cinnabon normally have apple in their cinnamon rolls. I've never actually had a Cinnabon cinnamon roll, but I do like cinnamon scrolls, so I'm just going to go with sort of changing that up a little bit. 30 grams of butter again, a teaspoon of salt, 40 grams of sugar, that was more than 40 grams of sugar. I've added too much sugar to this one, so it's not a quarter of a cup, okay? this particular batch is going to be a bit sweeter. I might make this that Cinnabon one. To that, I'm going to add my powdered milk, which was 20 grams of powdered milk. My 500 grams of flour. What I might do is just give that a quick mix with the dough hook on my mixer, just to get the sugar and the salt and butter all sort of mixed together with that powdered milk. Okay. 500 grams of flour straight in. That's just there to catch any drips. Instead of mixed spice, I'm going to only add cinnamon to this one. So this one's going to get 1 teaspoon again. So this is a ½ teaspoon measure, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, and my yeast and bread improver. And in the same way that I added the dried fruit to my traditional hot cross buns, I'm going to add just a little bit of chopped dried apple, because I have chopped dried apple and I just want to have that in there because I really like cinnamon and apple together. So I'm going to turn that on, get my dried apple, start chopping that up, and then I'll just add that to my dough. But turn this on really low really low mixing setting with a dough hook, and let it come together. I'm going to turn my dough off for a second while I chop some of this dried apple. This is just supermarket dried apple, and I want about, again, a cup of that. You don't have to add the apple. I'm not sure if the Cinnabon inspired hot cross buns at the supermarkets have apple in them or not. I didn't get enough time the other day when I was at the shop to see if they had apple in them or not. So all right, so I've got about a cup here of dried apple, and as you can see, that's how much my dough is combined. I'm just going to add my apple to that and turn it back on. So my dough's been mixing around in here for about the past 7 minutes. And I'm just going to take it out and put it into a separate bowl so that it can rest. You can hear my bread machine in the background. I do apologise about that, but I am making 4 different hot cross buns all at once today. The next flavour is going to have mixed spice in it, so I'm not too worried about getting every ounce of flavour off my dough hook. So I've just got a bowl here, and I'm just going to scrape out my dough. Okay, I want to let this rest. It's going to need at least an hour. I want this to double in size, all right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover it with plastic wrap and a tea towel, set it to the side over near the oven where it's a little warmer than where I'm standing right now, and we will move on with the next batch. Now, because the next batch I want to do is that Biscoff style, I'm not too worried that my dough or my bowl and my hook have a tiny remnant of cinnamon flavoured dough. Okay, there's just a little bit in there. I don't need to wash it. The Biscoff one is going to have mixed spice in it, but it's okay if there's a bit of cinnamon in there because Biscoff generally has like cinnamon in it. I'm not using Biscoff brand because I like to save money wherever I can, and I did find a different brand at the supermarket, and what we're using for this one is just the biscuit spread. So we're not going to be using any actual biscuit pieces or cookie pieces at all. We're just using the spread for this one, for this Biscoff style one. I have pre-measured a few of my bits and pieces just so you don't see me measuring the same thing over and over. Same base as before, 300 of water. I've got brown sugar instead of white sugar for this one though, okay? So same weight, just using brown sugar. Melted butter. I've got my salt and my powdered milk going in. Now I want to add some of this biscuit spread. This smells so yummy. It smells just like the biscuits. And I'm thinking one good heaped sort of tablespoon amount, dessert spoon amount. That's what I want in here. Straight in there. I'm going to add a teaspoon, half a teaspoon of the mixed spice for this one. Because we put the biscuit spread in there, I don't want to have the flavours compete. I want them to marry together and really enhance each other. So only half a teaspoon of the mixed spice. And then again, bread flour, yeast and bread improver if you're wanting to make this and use that. In exactly the same way as before, get this going. I didn't even mix that butter sugar in this time. Straight in there, get it started, get it mixing together and let it sort of do its work for at least 7 minutes. 7 to 10 is ideal and on a nice low speed. So let's see how this bread is coming together. This is our traditional, looks good, mixing nicely. I'm going to move my bread machine into a different room just so that I'm not competing with it in everything that I have to say. So that is the Biscoff Flavour combined for about 7 minutes. Okay, and we're going to get that one into a bowl. And in exactly the same way, I'm just going to wrap this one, pop it somewhere warm. And move on to the last one we're making today. So in exactly the same way as before, I'm going to make my chocolate, like Nutella stuffed hot cross buns. I'm not going to bother cleaning out my bowl. It's only got a little bit of cinnamon, a little bit of mixed spice in there. It's only going to add to the flavour. The chocolate's no doubt going to overpower anything anyway. So straight in here again, warm water. And I have pre-measured everything once again. I'm going to add an extra 10 grams of water this time. So I want 310 grams of water. The other measurements are the same. For my butter, my sugar, I'm going with white. I've got a little bit of vanilla, so I've got a teaspoon of vanilla that I'm also adding to this one. Salt and powdered milk are the same, but I'm also adding 20 grams of cocoa, and that's why I added the extra water. So I add all of that now. $500 grams of flour. Two teaspoons of yeast, 2 teaspoons of bread improver. I was asked recently in a different video what bread improver I use, and I just use Wallaby brand. So I just use this Wallaby Luck bread improver. I haven't found any other bread improver that's readily available to where I am. So if you have a bread improver that you know of that you really like, that's available in Australia, let me know and maybe I'll try it out. But that's the brand I use. That was a question I was asked recently on a different video, and I thought I'll just answer that here. And that's it. So we're going to add chocolate chips to this dough. I'm going to let it go through its 7 to 10 minute working progress on the machine before I add my chocolate chips. If I add my chocolate chips now, they're going to be far too broken up for what I want my hot cross bun to be. So those chocolate chips will be added at the very end. I'll give it one quick last mix to get them incorporated, and then that will be it. So if you want to make this particular recipe in a bread machine, utilize that delayed mix-in setting and have those added later. If your machine doesn't have a delayed mix-in setting, you can just have it set on a dough setting and then add your mix-ins when it's sort of in its last part of that cycle. So I'm going to get my chocolate flavoured dough mixing in the mixer. I've got my cup of chocolate chips ready, so they will go in just at the end. All right, dough is done. It looks the same as the others, but chocolate. So now what I'm going to do is just add my chocolate chips. Let that mix in. It's only going to take like not long at all. Just keep an eye on it. Once you see the dough chips are mixed through your dough, so once the chocolate chips are mixed through your dough, not dough chips, you know that it's done and we can pull it out. Okay, I'm happy with that. This one smells really yummy too, actually. They all smell delicious. Okay. I'm just making sure I don't have chocolate chips just sitting at the bottom of my bowl, because I'm going to let this one rise in this bowl just to save me having to wash up another bowl for no reason. So there's the chocolate chip dough. Okay, I'm going to wrap that one up. I'm going to put it with its friends in a nice warm place and let it rest for at least an hour or until it's double in size. While that's happening, we're going to move on to getting our stuffing for the ones that are going to have a little surprise inside of them done, and then we'll check on our dough once we're finished with that. So whenever I make these hot cross buns, I get about 12 out of a batch. So we've got 4 batches. And I want to make some stuffing for some of them. I noticed that the ones I'm basing some of these ingredients or recipes off had these little surprises in the middle. So I've got Nutella to go inside the chocolate dough. We've got that cookie spread to go inside that Biscoff inspired one. And for the cinnamon one with the apple, because that one's based off the Cinnabon hot cross bun that one of the supermarkets have come out with this year, I thought we could make some cream cheese frosting to stuff that one. So what I'm doing is I need 12 little stuffings for each one of those. My traditional hot cross buns won't have any stuffing in them because traditionally they don't have anything in them. So I'm just getting little spoonfuls and looking at that, that's probably too much. We don't want too much stuffing. I don't want these blowing out the side of my hot cross buns when they're baking in the oven. We want these concealed inside. So I'm looking at a small teaspoon amount, and I'm just popping them on a tray with a bit of baking paper, also known as parchment paper. And then I'm going to pop these in the freezer so that they're nice and hard, or hopefully harder than they currently are. And that should make them a lot easier to roll inside of my dough balls. So I'm going to get 12 of each of these flavors. So I've got my Biscoff type spread here. I did have these jars both stored in the fridge as well, just for anyone who's wanting to copy this at home. They have been living in the fridge. This one was opened from Christmas time, but I haven't even opened the Nutella yet, so that one I still put straight in the fridge. 2, 4, 6, 8, I've got 10. That one. Okay. And a bit of mum tax. It is a really yummy spread, that one. And the same thing with the Nutella. So I probably could have done this last night where I got my balls, yeah, this is better, this is a bit harder, where I got my balls of stuffing sort of pre-frozen, but because I didn't, I threw these in the fridge yesterday, and I feel like that, especially the Nutella is definitely hard enough. Okay, so there's my 12 little parcels of Nutella. Now I want to make a little bit of cream cheese sort of frosting for the Cinnabon one. And for that, I'm just going to go in with some rough measurements here. We've got 2 spoons, dessert spoons of cream cheese. I'm going to add a little bit of butter, about a tablespoon of butter. Just mix those together well. To that, I want to add a little bit of icing sugar. You can use icing sugar, you can use icing mixture, it really doesn't matter to this recipe anyway. And I'm thinking just about 3 heaped spoons of the icing sugar. To start with, we'll taste it, and if we need to add a little bit more, we will. But that should be about right. Give it a good mix, get it all well combined. This cream cheese frosting doesn't have to be perfect. It's not going on anything. It's just going to be a little bit of filling on the inside. If it works out the way I hope it will, it'll become this gooey, oozy warmness in the middle. Hopefully it holds itself together and we don't lose it inside the bun, but that's why this particular batch is an experiment. My hot cross bun recipe is reliable, but these new flavors, well, this is just a bit of fun. Let's see if they work out. I'm just gonna give it a quick taste. We might add just a tiny bit of vanilla as well. So you could add lemon juice instead of vanilla if you wanted to. I'm just going to add literally a couple of drops of vanilla. Give that a good stir. I'm gonna give this a taste. And hopefully it tastes somewhat like a cream cheese frosting that you would have on a cinnamon roll. Scroll, I should say, as we know them. Okay. Yeah, that's good. It's not too sweet, so that's nice. You could add up to probably another spoonful of the powdered sugar, the icing sugar, if that's what you wanted to do. I don't actually want this to be too sweet. I feel like that will be nice. So I need to get 12 spoonfuls of that onto my tray as well, so I can pop the whole thing in the freezer before we need to stuff our hot cross buns. All right, see if I can get 12 spoons out of this. All right, that's my stuffings. I got 12. I'm going to get those straight in the freezer. I want these as firm and as cold as possible before I go putting them inside my dough. All right, our bread is finished. It's proving, it's beautiful, it's fluffy. As you can see, we are bigger than we were, and the bread machine went off, so that was a great way for me to know that that's how long we needed. These two took a little bit longer, but that's only because I had them started a little later. So it was about an hour and 10 for the chocolate one, just because it was started later than I did the traditional one. So now what we need to do is, in exactly the same way as when I make bread rolls, I'm going to cut my dough and roll it out. So I've just got some plain flour here, and I'm just going to make sure I put enough down that we don't have sticking happening. Pull out, this is our traditional dough, nice and cleanly came out of there. I'm going to get 12 hot cross buns out of each one of these batches. So I'm just going to get a little flour on the outside just to help myself out. If you want to weigh your hot cross buns so they are all exactly the same size, you can do that. I'm not going to. My family is not going to be fussy if we have some larger ones and some smaller ones, but I am going to make sure I cut these into 12. When you're making a bread roll, and I did show this in my just bread recipe video, but I'll show you again, what you want to do is just tuck in your edges of your bread, make a nice little seam at the bottom. Then you turn him over and have your top side, which is your prettier side, facing up. You want your hand to be in the shape of a C, okay? And we just want to roll that in our hand, tightening up that seam that we created with those folds and making the top nice and shiny, I guess is a sort of way to say it. We just want to smooth out the top, okay? We want it to look like that. Now, I'm going to pop these on my tray. I have baking trays ready to go. Where can I put that you can see? If I put that here. Hot cross buns that you buy in the store seem to have they seem to have them all touching too. So if you want them to be as close as possible to store-bought, you want to have your hot cross buns touching. I like to give mine just a little bit of space between each, and that's just personal choice, okay? I'm going to roll all of my dough into tight balls. Well, the traditional ones anyway. We're going to stuff these other ones, remember? And then we need to make the batter, I guess. It's the pipe. We're going to pipe on a cross onto the top of each of these, because these are for Easter, and in our household and when I was growing up, they were traditionally eaten on Good Friday. But if you make them at home yourself, you can enjoy Easter treats whenever you like. You can have hot cross buns whenever it suits you. So that's the other advantage, other than saving money and knowing what's in your food. You can enjoy things all year round, because I know our supermarkets put the hot cross buns out. I think this year they had them out like Boxing Day, the day after Christmas. It just seemed ridiculously early, but a lot of people enjoy eating them, so maybe people were buying them. But yeah, they'll disappear after Easter and we won't see them again until later, probably the day after Christmas this year. So if you make them yourself and you feel like hot cross buns in the middle of October, you can have them. I'm putting a little bit of pressure down, but not a lot. And then I'm just making that C motion and forcing the ball around inside my hand. That's what I'm doing when I roll it like this. And mine are definitely not all the same size. I can see that just from looking at them. I've got some little baby ones there. I've got some bigger ones, but that's okay. So there's our traditional buns done. Now I need to get the crosses put on these, and I need to let them rise just a little bit longer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set these aside just on the bench behind me, and I'll let them rise over there while I finish making these ones. We will do the crosses all at once at the end, because the cross will be the same for all of them, except that Biscoff style one. I'm going to put a little bit of that spread in it. But other than that, the cross is generally going to be the same flavour, so I'll just make one batch and we'll pipe them all at once before we pop them in the oven. So we're going to let them rise first. So I'm going to cover it just with a tea towel, pop it on the bench behind me, and work on these other flavours, and I want to get the stuffing inside of them as well. Now I'm going to work a little bit quicker just because I've pulled my stuffings out, my little fillings here, and they're nice and cold and firm, but I don't want them to melt, so I want to get moving on that. So this one is the Biscoff inspired flavour, and it's a little stickier than that traditional one was. Because this one's a little stickier, I'm going to put a bit of flour on it just to help myself out. It's not much. All right, for these ones, these are the ones I'm stuffing, and I'll do this exactly the same with the others. I'm going to form my ball, or thereabouts. This is the plan. Actually, you know what? We're going to form our ball around our little piece of filling. So here's my filling, and I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to bring my dough up around on all sides. We want that seam to cover. Okay, and then gently, when we do the rolling, just make sure you don't pop that bit of filling out through the top. If you have too much flour, I find that they don't roll either, so you need to just find the balance between enough flour that your dough doesn't stick, but not too much. Okay, there we go. Nice and sealed seam, but the top doesn't have any filling. Yeah, so flatten it out a little bit. Grab your little bit of filling. I'm glad I froze it because it's already starting to be gooey. Seam over and over till we're closed. Give it a roll. That one, look, we've come close to exploding out of that one. So, got to be careful. So be gentle with the ones that have filling in them. They are more fragile. than if you're making just traditional hot cross buns. I may even have too much filling for the size. Like I may have scooped out more than I required. I could probably have gone with even less, but I did want to, like I'm hoping that these are going to melt nicely and sort of be a bit gooey in the center. And I thought that if I had too little, we won't get the flavour come through. But I am hoping that we don't end up with any of these exploding out the top. Probably could have just piped the Nutella and the spreads. We probably could have put them into a piping bag and just piped in a little bit in the middle. That probably would have worked equally as well and maybe kept hands a bit cleaner. So there's a thought going forward. If I do these again, I might try doing it that way. So if you make these at home and you decide to pipe the filling in instead of freezing it little blobs like I did, let me know in the comments below how that goes, because my hand is getting pretty messy from having to scoop up the Nutella. And I think the cream cheese is going to be a nightmare to try and scoop because it was already softer than the other two were, but that's okay. I can clean my hands again, that's not a problem. And yes, we do have a nut allergy in our family. For those of you who've been following for a little while, the person who is allergic to nuts doesn't live here, so they don't eat the food all the time. So they won't actually get any of these ones. And that's why sometimes you'll see I make things nut-free and other times they are with nuts, because I'm catering to whoever I know will be eating what I'm making at the time. This is my cinnamon with apple, and I'm going to try and get that cream cheese stuffed into this one. I might actually grab a spoon for this one. I don't know that it's going to go in as easily. The cream cheese was already softer. The cream cheese frosting there that I made was a bit softer already. Than like the Nutella. All right, let's see how these go. Yeah, I needed a spoon. That's very soft. I'm being much gentler with the ones that are stuffed as well. All right, I'm really not putting any pressure when I'm doing the rolling, because I don't want to bust out the filling. So with the traditional one, or if you wanted to make these plain as well, you could take out the fruit and just do the mixed spice. And then the cross on top, you can be a little more rough in the rolling, but when it comes to them being stuffed, we need to be a little gentle. Okay, I'm going to finish rolling these. I'm going to get them set aside with their friends over there, and then I will make the cross mixture, show you how we go from there. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is we need to make the cross. It's not a hot cross bun if it doesn't have a cross on the top. It's just a sweet bread otherwise. So the cross is significant. If you don't want to eat them with the cross, of course you can leave them out. But if you do want to make hot cross buns with the cross on top, you need to add that before you bake them, okay? And the cross is simply flour, water, a little bit of oil, and a little bit of sugar. So I'm just going to put everything in my bowl, give it a mix, and then I will be piping my crosses on. You could probably use a Ziploc bag if you weren't comfortable using a piping bag or you don't have a piping bag. I don't believe I've ever made them just drizzling the cross on though. So let's get started in making them. Again, I've got my scales. And I'm just going to go with 200 grams of flour. We may need to make more mixture. Hopefully the 200 gram flour quantity will be enough though. So 200, I want to add about 30 mils of oil. This is just olive oil. You can use whatever oil you like, okay? I want some icing sugar, and to that I want about 60 grams. Which for me is that much. And about 220 grams of water. It is a paste, it's not like cream or something. Okay, move that aside. I've got a little whisk here. I'm just going to give that a gentle whisk. I want to get the lumps out. You don't want a lumpy cross. All right, there is the texture you're going for, okay? I guess you could drizzle it. I've never drizzled, I've always just piped my crosses. So we need a piping bag. And an easy way to fill a piping bag is to get a jug that is larger, nice and tall. Like that. Okay, into there, I'm going to pour my paste. Now I have added vanilla to this in the past as well, which is really nice. Okay. Give it a good twist, and now that is ready to go. Okay, so my oven temperature is set. It's at 180 degrees, and I turned that on when I started rolling out my dough. You just want to cut your piping bag. We don't want too fat of a cross. Hopefully this one will be okay. I'm not going to pipe my Biscoff ones. I'm going to add a little bit of that biscuit spread to this paste. So what I'm going to do is all of the others first. And the way you do it is just one seamless line. Don't worry that it touches the paper. Okay, and then back the other way. I'm not putting much pressure at all on my piping bag. I'm letting that basically just fall out, and I'm going to store it in there, that way up. Okay, so there's my tip there with the cut. And there you go. Okay, these are going straight into the oven. I'm going to put my first two trays, no, I'm going to do one tray at a time, simply because of just the way my oven is. I'm going to get those in the oven. They're only going to take about 20 minutes. While they're in the oven, I can pipe my other crosses on. This will be easier for you to see because we are piping a white cross onto a brown dough. Okay, I'm not going to cover this again because otherwise my cross will mark my tea towel and it'll get all smudged. So I'm just going to set it aside, pipe my traditional ones, my traditional buns, I should say. When you're using a piping bag too, squeeze from the bottom. You have this tightly twisted, okay, so nothing's going to fall out. And then if you squeeze from the bottom, you'll have better control over your piping bag. So there's just a tip as well. And you use this other hand, your front hand, just to control where it's going. But you use your back hand at the scrunched up area and you just squeeze it from there. You don't need to squeeze from the top of the bag, from the front here. You don't need to squeeze here. You squeeze here with this hand. Just gently though. This doesn't require much squeezing at all, it really just falls out. Okay, back in there. Traditional buns are crossed. So for my Biscoff crosses, I want to add just a little bit of that Biscoff or that cookie spread. So I'm going to take what's left of my piping bag and I'm just going to squeeze it out. I won't even need all of this. So this 200 gram of flour recipe that I've given you for the crosses is more than enough. It's more than you'll need for the 4 batches, all right? For this, I just want to add some more of the cookie spread. So I'm going to add just 1 dessert spoon back into the paste that I made the crosses with. Give that a good mix in. I feel like these flavour combinations, we could get really creative. There's quite a lot of things I've been thinking while I'm doing this here today. I'm thinking of all these other combinations I could have made. So there's always next year. I'm just going to fold up my tip, okay, and pop it in my bag, into my cup. I'm going to push down my bag so that I can refill it. And I lost my little piece of plastic. There it is, my tip. I knew it was stuck to the spoon. There it is, I got it out, don't worry. Again, twist it. You don't want anything leaking out the back of the bag, all right? You can see some of these are a little thin. No doubt that's gonna burst out while it's cooking. There we go. They're now ready for the oven as well. So my buns are all there, waiting for their turn in the oven. Now the last component that makes the hot cross bun that special treat is it needs a glaze on the top. As soon as these come out of the oven, we need to brush a glaze on them. And the glaze is simply sugar and water, and I like to add just a little bit of gelatine. I find if you don't add the gelatine, you end up with the sugar water just kind of soaks into the bread a bit much. That gelatine holds it just a little more firm and keeps it like a good glaze on the outside. Okay, so what I like to do is about half a cup of white sugar straight into a saucepan. That's a 1/4 cup, so I'm going to add 2. And then about the same of water. So this is just a 50-50 sugar syrup. It's nothing particularly hard or fancy to make. And then I'm just going to add half a teaspoon of gelatine. This is just powdered gelatine to the water. The water was cold, it wasn't hot. Okay, give that a good whisk. And we're going to heat that up on the stove. So I've got my flame on, putting my sugar water with that little bit of gelatine. And we just want to get this dissolved. That's all we're trying to do here. So my sugar, my gelatine are dissolved in my water. That's all we are doing for our glaze. We need to keep it warm. Don't let it just get cold. You don't want to keep it in the fridge or anything like that. Sitting there on the element with the fire off, so the element turned off, will be enough to just keep it warm until our buns come out of the oven. And I can smell, these first ones smell so good. These are the Cinnabon inspired with apple. So I'm looking forward to test tasting actually all of these buns, but that one is smelling delicious. It's been in there for 15 minutes, so we've got another 5 to go. And as soon as they come out, we're going to brush the glaze on and then they can cool down completely. Look at that. Some of them exploded. Thought it might happen. They smell so good. They're cooked, delicious. So here they are. So some have exploded where that dough was thinner and the filling has come out. So keep that in mind if you do make these and you do make them with the stuffing in them. The ones that are not so pretty, like this one, this one, this one, that one, that is where the dough was too thin around the top and it's just made them, yeah, they just haven't had enough bread product over top of that filling. So keep that in mind. Anyway, it was a learning curve. We've never made these before. Let's get them brushed now that they're straight out of the oven, still hot. And they just need a light brush with our syrup to give them the shine. Can you see how shiny they are? I don't know if the lighting is good enough to show the shine on them, but as soon as you brush that glaze on, they're lovely and shiny. So we've pulled out that Biscoff flavour, that's this one here, and we haven't had too many explosions, so I'm pretty happy with that one. There's the traditional at the back, and that is that Cinnabon inspired one. And we do have our last batch in the oven now. The chocolate is in there rising, cooking. All right, so we've pulled out the chocolate. This is the last batch, and I just want to show you how you can test if bread is ready as well. Can you hear the hollowness? That indicates that it's cooked as well as the browning. But chocolate bread is a little harder to see because it is already brown. So I just thought I'd add that little tip. All right, so there is the final batch ready to be glazed. All of our hot cross buns are out of the oven. I so wish you could smell this right now. I'm surprised I don't have neighbours banging on my door, to be honest, because it smells so good in here right now. So I don't know, which one should I try? I'm leaning towards this Biscoff one because I feel like this is interesting. I have had a chocolate chip hot cross bun before, but not one with Nutella. I never had a Biscoff one, and Biscoff is one of my favourite flavours. So I've got my little bunny butter dish here, and I've got a little plate. I want to try, I think I'll try this one. Okay, so it looks good. So let's give this one a try. If anyone asks, the cake plate That was from the reject shop. The little bunny butter dish, that was from TK Maxx last Easter, so I don't know if they are available this year. Let's have a look. I'm hoping we have a layer of Biscoff inside of here. Oh, we have okay, so it's all at the top, like there. I'm gonna put a bit of butter on because I like my hot cross bun with a little bit of butter. Just fold that back over. So yeah, most of my Biscoff was sitting at the top of that one. I don't think they're all like that though. So let's taste. All right, let's give this a taste. I want to try all of them, but there's just a lot of hot cross bun for one person. So I'm going to get my family to taste those for me. But that is delicious, absolutely delicious. If you're a fan of Biscoff, definitely, and you want to make hot cross buns, definitely give this one a try. Okay, so that was delicious. If you're looking for a hot cross bun recipe or something new for Easter, if you've never made hot cross buns or had them before, definitely give these recipes a try. That was just delicious. It was the perfect amount of sweetness. It wasn't too sweet at all, but it was enough. I didn't need to add anything else. A little bit of butter was perfect. Yeah, so thank you so much for spending time with me today. Thank you so much for watching my videos. You guys are amazing. I have the best subscribers and I have the best viewers. Some of you have left me just the most beautiful comments over the last few weeks, and I want to say a very heartfelt thank you to you for that. I have read them. I do appreciate you, and I appreciate all of you for spending time with me and letting me do what I love doing. And I'm so glad that some of you are trying some of the things that I'm making. Happy Easter, and have a fantastic week. I'll catch you next time. Bye. There we have it, friends. We've got the Cinnabon inspired with the cream cheese filling. We have the chocolate chip with the Nutella filling, the incredibly delicious cookie spread Biscoff style filling, and of course, who can walk past a traditional hot cross bun?